Alex stalked off to his father's car where he sat fuming, and when his dad got in, he asked what was going on. Alex said he was furious at all the hypocrites in the service who never cared about Kevin when he was alive, but now that he was dead, everyone was acting so sad in public like he mattered to them. But he didn't. They didn't care. And in fact, Alec was now convinced, like Lisa Haynes' brother, that the killer had to be one of those hypocrites. They were there in the church. He knew it. By May 22nd, so 10 days after the murder, Lead and his team were no closer to making an arrest, and the detectives were starting to disagree amongst themselves about how to move forward. Several believed that Maggie had not told them everything she knew. Maybe Maggie was not involved in the crime, but she could be holding back details about the family's history or something that happened on the night of the murder that had helped them solve the case, and so they wanted to bring Maggie back to the police station for more questioning. Lead didn't like the idea. Maggie had answered their questions over and over again, often giving investigators more details than they really wanted. What more could she have to say? And Lead feared that Maggie might have a serious emotional breakdown if they asked the same questions again as though they didn't believe her earlier answers. But Lead ran the team like a democracy, and when the other detectives outvoted him, he agreed to question Maggie one more time. At 11 a.m. that morning, Weed walked into an interview room and sat down across from a now somewhat resentful Maggie Haynes. But to Lead's surprise, Maggie did have more to say. As Lead asked question after question in his gentlest voice, Maggie energetically responded. As Maggie recalled the unfolding attack on her family, she said she could smell the blood when she stepped from her bedroom out into the hall. When she got to her parents' room, she couldn't see any blood, she said, but her mother was so upset that when she asked her to go get help, Maggie didn't ask any questions. She just went and got help. In the moments after Maggie had learned that her parents and brother were dead, she said the first person she wanted to call was the head of her prayer group at college. She wanted to know why God would let something so terrible happen. And then Maggie started to cry. By the time she walked out of the police station, Alan Lead was convinced of two things. One, Maggie had nothing to do with the crime. And two, she had told them everything she knew. Over the next 2 weeks, tips about the Haynes murders continued to come into police, but the results were much the same. They put a microphone on one informant who claimed that a guy named Amani had confessed to invading the Haynes' home and then, quote, taken care of, end quote, the people inside. But after 2 weeks of eavesdropping on Amani's conversations, all police heard about was Amani bragging about women, drugs, and guns. He did not seem to know anything about a triple murder. Meanwhile, one of Kevin's best friends, Alec Kreider, who'd become really angry at the memorial service, convinced the killer was amongst them, he started to break down. In the first days after the killing, his parents worried that he was keeping his grief about Kevin's death inside, becoming even more silent and withdrawn than usual. Alec had never had an easy time expressing his feelings, and he didn't have a lot of close friends aside from Kevin and Warren. And then, in early June, 3 weeks after the murder, Alec began talking about suicide on the phone with a girl he had a crush on. Her name was Carolyn. On June 5th, he told Carolyn he had a loaded gun and he didn't think he was going to make it through the week. Carolyn's heart started racing when she heard this because she feared Alec really was going to kill himself, maybe even on the phone with her at that very minute. She managed to get the attention of her aunt who lived with her, and she let her know that she had a suicidal boy on the phone. Carolyn gave her aunt Alex's address and said she had to go there to warn Alex's mother. Carolyn then kept Alec on the phone until her aunt spoke to Alex's mom, and Alex's mom called 911. When Alec finally came out of his bedroom, there were several police officers waiting who tackled him and then handcuffed him to prevent him from hurting himself. Detective Lead had come with the 911 response when he heard the call, in part because he knew Alec better than anyone else in the department from the Haynes investigation. Lead walked next to Alec as he was gently led out of the house towards a squad car, and as he walked, Lead put his arm around Alec and just said, how are you doing? And all Alec would say was, "The world is a terrible place."